Today, plastic surgery is about as simplistic as ordering a fast food meal, and probably safer too, but that hasn't always been the deal. The first modern plastic surgery on record was performed during World War I, a fantastical and dangerous procedure that nearly killed the man under the knife. So today we are unraveling the untold story of the first plastic surgery in history. But before we say face, why not subscribe to Memory Lane channel and scrub into the comments and let us know what kinds of medical marvels you'd want to hear about. Walter Ernest O'Neill Yeo was blessed with 3 son names and born in 1890 in Plymouth, Devon. Within a year of Yeo's birth, his father's ship, the HMS Serpent, sank after crashing into rocks at Puna Bay. Of the 3 people to survive the wreck, Petty Officer Francis Yeo was not one of them. So growing up, it was just Walter, his sisters, and his mom tending to things in their southwestern English home. To make ends meet as a single mother, Brother Cyril was employed as a maker at the Royal William Yard. Growing up wasn't exactly rosy for the Yeo family. It was a tumultuous time during the turn of the century, leading up to the First World War. But even at his age, Walter Yeo has a powerful love for his country and the high seas. At 12 years old, when most kids are collecting Pigmont cards, or in his generation's case, poking a hoop with a stick, Walter joined the Royal Navy. He was eventually made a petty officer and held the post until the World War I began. He was stationed on a Queen Elizabeth class battleship called the HMS Warspite, which is a cool name for a ship that won many battles, including the infamous Battle of Jutland, which would change the course of Yeo's life. While manning the guns during the Battle of Jutland, Yeo was wounded at his post. With the constant barrage of shells hammering the warships, they were bound to be casualties, and Yeo's face was one of them. The upper half of his face sustained terrible burn damage, completely losing his upper and lower eyelids, leaving him unable to blink, even granting him the soft skill of eye contact. His documentation was poor in the mid-1910s. It is unknown which hospital admitted him first, but however, he was eventually brought to Plymouth Hospital to wait for better accommodations at the converted Queen Mary's Hospital. The bad news: that short wait ended up lasting 15 months, but the good news is that Queen Mary's result was worth the wait. When he finally arrived at Queen Mary's, Yeo's case was given special attention by a physician named Sir Harold Gillis. Gillis was a famous doctor who had invented a technique for grafting skin from undamaged parts of the body onto damaged parts. But Yeo's situation was unique and not necessarily a walk in the park. For starters, Gillis noted that Yeo's severe disfigurement was causing waxing scar tissue to form on the forehead and nose. The good doctor decided this was going to be a long and arduous process and opened up a special ward in the hospital designed specifically to treat severe facial wounds. Yeo was the first patient brought in, making history in the process. The method of helping Yeo get his face back was both incredibly ingenious and absolutely horrifying. Skin and soft tissue are moved from one place in the body and attached to a section where the skin and flesh need to regrow. The resulting flap of skin is known as a tube pedicel. Both ends of the skin need to be anchored to allow blood to circulate and flow until one end is able to be severed and moved closer. Little by little, the replacement skin gets closer and closer until the skin is healthy enough to live on its own. For the early 20th century, that process was downright magical. While this all sounds well and good on paper, it required Gillis to operate from a completely unique circumstance, essentially rebuilding a significant portion of Yeo's face in the process. There are many different kinds of marks: porcelain, wood, rubber. In the case of Walter Yeo, the leather face specifically, marks can be made of human flesh. In order to make a new face, Gillis had to get pretty creative. Initially, good skin was taken from undamaged parts of Yeo's body and then attached by tubes of flesh to allow blood flow. This requires tracing out the graft, trimming it down just perfectly, making slit for the eyelids, and then slapping the whole shebang on what used to be Yeo's face. It couldn't be simpler. This portion of the facial reconstruction was one of the most arduous, occurring over several weeks, with Yeo having to remain completely still through all of it. And this was before doctors' offices had TVs showing Netflix to pass the time. Can't even imagine. When talking about Yeo's face marks, that's not to indicate this is the kind of marks that slips comfortably on top of the old and busted flesh. In order to consider the surgery a success, Gillis needed the skin to become fused to Yeo's face. This meant that some of that face skin needed to come off. The skin around the initial injury was scarred and waxy, in line with how most scar tissue works. This damaged skin needed to be removed to allow the new skin to grow completely. Yeo was anesthetized, which back then may just have involved a well-placed chokehold, and the damaged skin was forcibly evicted. The process of growing new eyelids, cheeks, brows, and a nose had begun. Listen, we are not going to pretend that everything was hunky-dory with major cosmetic surgery done roughly at the turn of the century. This delicate procedure, while innovative and potentially life-changing, did not all go as planned. 5 days after this first operation, Yeo developed a pretty serious infection which required surgical intervention. While Yu was not badly harmed by the first infection, the second infection after the marks had been put into place was far worse for poor Yu. Drastic surgical procedures were employed to fix the issue and keep Yu alive, despite Yu's flesh and skin floating in pores to keep it into the colorful Thames used by Gillis. To his credit though, Gillis and his team of doctors were able to save Yu and the marks. Repairing a blown up human face isn't something you can just rush through like a NASCAR pit crew, not even in modern medicine. Though Yu was originally injured in May 1916, the first surgery did not happen until November of the following year. That following January 1918, the tube of skin and flesh which attached the marks to his face were finally able to be removed, but the surgeries were far from over. Minor revisions such as skin trims, tucks, and alterations had to be made for aesthetic purposes. The result was something that could pretty much pass for normal, or as close as normal could be. By July of 1919, Yu was fit for discharge, 3 years after the injury and 2 after the surgeries began. Yu's first of its kind procedure, despite being an unbelievable success, did not mean he was totally out of the woods forever. It turns out when a new face is built, the recovery contains all manners of issues. Record shows that Yu underwent further operations related to his reconstruction surgery in August of 1921, with notes reporting his condition was improved but still severe. He ended up in the hospital for 4 months before again being discharged. Another visit to the Royal Navy Hospital in 1938 treated a corneal ulcer Yu had been dealing with, but after that discharge, little else is known about his health until his death. So what do you think? Were you blown away by this incredible piece of history? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and while you're here, dive into more fascinating videos on our channel.